Good morning, good afternoon for everyone. Thank you so much for making it to today's session. A warm welcome to my latest Change Does Matter webinar. Those of you who have been following me either through my newsletters, my LinkedIn posts, you know that for over a year and a half, I organize these free workshops every 6 to 8 weeks for people to connect, to really find other like-minded change leaders and practitioners and see how we can enrich our approaches with new topics. Today's 45 session is going to focus on sharpening your art of handling objections. Based on the registrations and our LinkedIn connections, I know that you've already got some good practices. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to give you a bit of a framework and maybe a new perspective, a new viewpoint on the topic, and invite you to think with us, with the others as well on this call. In case this is your first time joining me, please be prepared for the next 45 minutes. It's not just me talking. You will be also invited to be actively participating, which means there will be short poll questions and one breakout session. At the end of the session, I will also have a small surprise for you. So stay on and let's see what's waiting for us today. A very brief introduction of myself. My name is Margit Takacs. I'm a change management consultant, a published author of the book Change Matters. I'm a trainer and coach, and most of my professional career I have dedicated to the topic of change and transformation. With over 2 decades of experience in the field and lots of projects and transformational programs behind myself, I believe I've got a few things to share with you, and that's what I'd like to do today. To give you value, to make this European lunchtime a good time for you. So let's jump into it. What is our outlook for today? We're going to explore 8 typical objections to change. There are many more, but based on a power persuasion course and program I attended over a decade ago, I thought this could be a really good guideline for us to see why are people saying no to us? What can we do about them saying no to us? In my previous webinars, feel free to watch the replays, we've already explored how resisting is human and natural. It is going to happen, but there are ways to prevent it and also to manage it. I would like to make sure that today's session is not just me lecturing about the ins and outs of the profession of change management, but also that we give ourselves the chance for an enriching dialogue in the breakout session, the one breakout session we will have a little later, and that you will walk away with strategies and practical tips that you can bring back to your workplace or even to your family life if you have difficult stakeholders in your private life. I do believe change management is common sense, but as professionals in the field, we are committed to bring some structure to it so that common sense becomes a common practice with a human-centric approach. So let's jump into it. You are in the right place, dear ladies and gentlemen. If you want to take time during these 45 minutes to reflect, think, and activate your inner wisdom. Seeing the registrations, we've got hundreds of years of experience on this virtual call. And for that reason, I invite you to share your inner wisdom, your experience, and what works for you. I'd like you to be able to walk away with practical tips to cope with naysayers. For non-native speakers, should there be any, naysayers are the people who are saying no, no, no. That's an official name for them. So the no-sayers are the naysayers in English. And if you are a person who wants to honor and incorporate different perspectives and viewpoints, I think you will also benefit from today's session. What you will learn today is how we are wired for stability. That's why resistance is natural and human. But we have a couple of main drivers that's worth reflecting on. I would like to talk to you also about the 8 typical objections and for you to walk away with strategies and tactics. I often asked, is there a magic wand that would help me deal with resistance? Well, I let you answer it at the end of today's session, but there will be a little surprise, a free takeaway I'd like to share with you that I trust will be able to help you advance on this topic too. So, starting with today's session, Polev is a platform I use regularly to engage my virtual audience, and I would like to invite you to either follow Karin Skomby's comment. She is a burnout prevention coach for financial professionals, and my friend who has joined me today as a producer. Thank you so much, Karin, for being there. So Karin is just adding a link to the chat of our function, but you can see also a QR code. So feel free to pick up your smart device and scan this little QR code that you can see on the screen. The question I would like to ask to you is, what is your secret trick today to tackle objections? I'm going to wait for a moment. If the functionality works, it should. We've already tested. So feel free to use either the link from Karin or the link that the QR code that you can see. I will wait for a couple of those comments coming in. I'm inviting you to use one word at a time because that's a word cloud. If you use more, the word cloud will be a bit messy, but let's just warm up to this because this is a link I will use on 2 more occasions today. So if you have it, if you have the access to it once, then it's going to work perfectly. So I see already 7 people have given their comments. Let's see what are our tricks. Listen seems to be one that is very much a secret trick or weapon for us. Actively listening, using logic, patience, influencing, taking ownership, having patience. Because yes, objections are natural, but if you're patient to seek to understand what holds them back, we are in a good place. So I see listening, patience, finding a common ground, a common goal, common interest, making sure that we take ownership for this and share that ownerships are all very helpful ways to engage people so that we can address any reasons for them to be naysayers, to be against of changes we want to drive. Thank you so much. So keep this link open because on 2 more occasions, I will invite you to add your comments and thoughts to it. Now, a little bit of a food for thought. Most of you probably know Dilbert already, and this is not 100% related to the webinar, but I thought it's a good one to just warm up lightheartedly to today's content. As you can see, the text is like, did you make the changes I asked for? That depends. Do you remember what you asked me to change? No. Yeah, I made all the changes. That's so true. Sometimes just not knowing what change we want to drive or not knowing what people are expecting from us can be seen as resistance, an objection. But let's, with this lighthearted cartoon, let's unfold the topic of managing the changes and transformations at our workplace with a bit of a structured approach. From the participants, I see a couple of people who are advanced practitioners of change already. Thank you so much for making the time for today's session. Some of you, I know, are already trained and certified in the ProSci methodology. I brought 2 slides for us to have a bit of an academic research-based reference to today's topic. The first one is from benchmarking study that ProSci, an organization with great reputation in the field of change and transition, carries out for over 2 decades. Every 2 years, they do a survey with more than 1,700 organizations, and they ask them what are the factors for success in change. And every 2 years, they publish on the link below their findings. For a long time, these are the 7 that always make it to the top. Mobilize active and visible executive sponsorship. If we want to deal with objections well, if we want to be successful, we need to make sure that the top bosses, the sponsors, the leaders are active and visible. So not just talking and giving a lip service to a change we want to see, but they're actively participating in it. If there is a structured change management approach or plan, of course, having a framework, not just relying on intuition can help. If we engage with frontline employees, if we communicate frequently and openly, engage or project management in the process. So look at the technical and the human side of any changes at the same time. If you have dedicated change management resources, sometimes that's money, sometimes that's a partial full-time equivalent, FTE. So someone who can dedicate part of their time to change can actually make a huge difference. And also if we engage with and support people managers. If you're interested, on the link below, you can find the full findings and the report from this organization called ProSci, a great platform to keep training and upskilling ourselves on this field. But if you look at this, there are a lot of people in this chart that can say no. Look at this. I mean, you could say even number 2, 4, and 6 are related to people. but leaders can have their objections. Frontline employees can have their objections. Project managers or the team of project management can say no, as well as the middle managers. Now we know it's natural and human to resist change because we are hardwired for stability. It's a bit of a survival mechanisms in today's fast changing world too. But there is a second slide I'd like to share with you from this organization, which was looking at which ones are the most resistance groups. And for a moment, I would like to invite you to have a look at this graph. Based on their research, and this is a report published this month in June 2024, the link is below, they found that they identified that mid-level managers, so in between the big bosses and the frontline employees, are the group that are most resistant to change, most likely to resist the change. It's 43% of the participants felt that mid-level managers are often the problem. Now, the good news is if you have change management expertise or professionals in your network to reach out to with a conscious change plan, you can prevent a big part of this. But I'd like to leverage your experience and expertise right now and invite you to write in the chat, in the Zoom chat, what do you think? Why do the mid-level managers are so likely to resist change? Why do you think it's 43%? So please in the chat, write it. Why do you think the mid-level managers would be so likely to resist change? I'm waiting for your comments in the Zoom chat. They are comfortable in their role. Very good. Thank you so much, Bernard. They like it. Why change it when it ain't broken? They are afraid of the unknown. Thank you, Marilena. Indeed, one of the major reasons for people to resist a change. The lack of understanding of the goal and possible consequences. Thank you, Jose Luis. Averting risk. Yes, why take risky decisions along the way? They execute the change. They are afraid they may fail to deliver and feel they already have enough on their plate. Great, great, great comments. Now, if you dive into the topic of change and transformation, you will notice that there are lots of researches carried out that show that when we are in an organization and a big change is coming, a transformation, a culture change, a program to change the way we are working, people are expecting that the top leaders, the executive leaders, give us the big picture, the context to understand the why, at least for our business or organization. But almost all the frontline employees appreciate the big guys talking about the transformation, but they appreciate even more if their direct supervisor or manager talks about the change. What does it mean for me? What does it mean for my team? And from my experience of decades of working in the field of change, we often disregard the fact that we don't focus enough on the mid-level managers, whilst they are a change advocate. If we tackle their objections, we win them over, it will be so much easier when we want to drive a change. Again, I'm talking from experience, my own experience, but lots of researchers prove the same. And in the chat, I've seen a lot of comments already that talk about the major drivers, likely drivers for any change. The first is the fear of the unknown, as you've mentioned. We don't know what it is, so we don't know whether it will be good for us. The loss of control, where we feel that we've been doing things so well, why change it right now? Or cognitive bias. For some people, especially non-native speakers, it might be some kind of a fluffy, fancy expression, but it's all about, we know what we know. We know we've tried this before. So cognitively, consciously, we feel that it's just not going to work. We already pre-decides the fate of a change initiative. We might have emotional reasons like, I like you, I don't like you, I trust you, I don't trust you, and that can drive resistance. We might feel that we don't have a support in our team. Social support can be your immediate team or the organization. When we're going to change the ways we work, I know they are not going to do what's requested, and that will hold me back. If we have an issue with trusting or change leaders, the ones above, if we mistrust them, the credibility will be gone there. And let's be honest, some of you mentioned in the chat already, fear of failure. We are not certain we are capable and ready to drive a change. Those are all reasons that can hold us back, you and me as well, not just the others, and why we might be also sharing with others what are the concerns we have when it comes to driving change. Briefly, I mentioned to you that about a decade ago, I attended a workshop, a very interesting session on power persuasion. I admit to you, I love the topic. Power, persuasion. Don't I wish to have the techniques to bring others on board? And with the group of people I attended this program with, we were looking at what are the typical objections. And inspired from that session, and based on my experience, I came up with 8 typical objections. I already have to tell you, they are non-exhaustive. But for the fun of this workshop and the interactivity of this workshop, I'm going to present them to you. Please pay attention to the 8 as I briefly explain to them, and also keep an eye on the chat because Karin is going to add a small summary document that you can have at your hand, because right after that, we're going to split up into 4 groups to discuss the 8 objections. And each group is going to be assigned 2 types of objections. You will be given 10 minutes, and whilst I'm presenting, my dear friend and producer, Karin, is going to set up everything at the background for these 10-minute breakouts. So the first one, if you are invited to group A, I'm going to ask you to talk about 2 objections, which are open disagreement. Have you ever heard, yeah, it might be possible, but I doubt it because... Now, if you ask me, they are really pain in the if you face people who are openly disagreeing with you. But the good thing about them is that once they verbalize what their issues are, it's so much easier to address them. So we will not talk about open disagreement as one group, as one topic. The second will be the opposite in a way, which is covered disagreement. People who hide behind any excuses to tell you what holds them back. They might say things, well, okay, if that's what you want, but at the same time, they think to themselves, what a load of nonsense. I'm not going to do that. This is a hard one to tackle, but I'm sure you can think within your organization of people who say, yes, I'm going to do it, and they don't move a finger. Covert disagreement is the second type of objection we might be experiencing. When I finish with this short presentation, if you are invited to group number B, you will have another 2 objections to explore. Reluctant compliance, just like the little kid swallowing the medication. But if we put that into an adult context, a business context, then we can say, well, if that's what you want, then that's what we'll have to do. These are the people who do things because they have to comply. I've seen a lot of organizations who, when they wanted to reiterate, for example, their code of ethics, their ways of working in an ethical manner, they do an e-learning program and they check how many employees have done that. That is often a compliance-driven change. People reluctantly might fill things in, but they don't really buy into it. So it's still a kind of an objection. So that's reluctant compliance. In group number B, the 4th type of objection is undecided. Have you ever heard people saying, I'm just not sure it will work? These are the fence sitter. We could say they are not fully resisting. But if you want to bring people on board for your changes, we can't let them sit on the fence and stay in the neutral zone. They need to decide yes or no. And that uncertainty, managing that uncertainty and the lack of decision-making ability is our responsibility as change leaders and practitioners. So we've already talked about group A and group B, and there are 2 types of objections. I can imagine right now in your mind there are lots of adult bubble ideas coming up on what else could be a resistance, but let's explore based on my experience what I'd like to propose to you. The 5th one that group C is going to discuss is I need more background information because before I can make a decision. Now, those of you are familiar with personality, behavioral profiling like DISC or others, these are the people who are really compliant and really good with details. And if you go and propose something to them, and it's not, the T's are not crossed, the I's are not dotted, they will find a reason to hold back and say, you still have to give me more information. So we have to acknowledge there are people who want to have detailed plans and all the background details to make sure that they can make a decision for the way forward. Group C will be also invited to talk about the lack of need, which is the 6th objections. I just don't think we have the need for that right now. Well, in the world of change, we talk a lot about desire and what's in it for me. So I will be inviting the participants from Group C to think about tactics and what would you do if someone just doesn't see the need, the why for the change you want to drive. Pausing for a moment to let you grasp all of that. And of course, all of this is in the document that Karen kindly shared in the chat. So feel free to download it and have it at hand. If you are invited to the 4th and last group, you are going to have the objections 7 and 8 assigned to you. Again, 7 is about wrong time. I must give this some thought. Can you come back next month? It's a bad time for us to make decisions like this. These are the people who are asking you for more time. Maybe they don't see the need, or they are indeed flooded with all the other responsibilities. But dear change mavericks, practitioners and leaders of change today at this call, what would you do to tackle their objection? I'm going to invite you to think about that. And last but not least, something that officially we call referred decisions, but I like calling it the Tai Chi resistance or objection. Probably most of you know what Tai Chi is. It's a beautiful meditative, we could also consider a sport, a practice that is frequently followed in many cultures, not just in the Occident, but all around the world. And very simply put, often we explain that there is an invisible ball and we are moving that ball. Tai Chi management or Tai Chi objection is when I'm told something and I invisibly pass it to someone else. That's the referred decision. That's why we call it the Tai Chi resistance. If people say to you something like, I need to have a word with my partner, my boss, my teammate, my sponsor, the CEO, and then come back to you, that can be a Tai Chi kind of an objection to tackle. So without wanting to give you an exhaustive list of objections, I don't think it's humanly possible. I'd like to focus on these 8. And as I mentioned to you, build on your inner wisdom. So Karin is going to invite you in a moment, not just yet, for a 10-minute breakout session. And how we're going to work together is when you are assigned to your groups, feel free to introduce yourself. That's your time to connect with each other, not just with me. And thank you so much for making it today. And focus on the 2 objections that your group is assigned to. Look at the document Karin has sent to you, so you can also see the example topics there. Now, what I'd like you to do is when we are in your groups in 10 minutes, I don't need you to take a lot of notes, but I'd like to invite you for each of the objections to come up with 3 tactics, 3 practical things you think you could do in order to tackle that. Because when we come back, I will do a debrief on this. For example, if you get open disagreement, you could write number 1, so we know which type. We could ask clarifying questions, provide evidence, or suggest an experiment. This is non-exhaustive, but let's see what you would do. Then write down number 2 if you're discussing number 2. For this discussion, as we are going to be in different groups, and you're going to be away from the virtual plenary from me, I would like you to use the very same link we used at the beginning. Hopefully you still have it open on your laptop or on your phone. The QR code is there. And just in case, Karen, if you can reattach the link hyperlink, because once you are here, I would like to invite you to write your responses that you generate with your team. Always remember to put in number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on which objections you are leading to. I would like to invite one person to be a bit of a time checker. So you have 10 minutes. After 5 minutes, I will broadcast a message that we are halfway through to make sure that you've got a couple of ideas on what you could do in real life to tackle those objections. When we come back, I will debrief, and hopefully I will enrich some of those with my tips as well. So are there any questions I can help you with? If not, then Karin, please invite people to the group. Warm welcome. I see quite a few smiles over there. 10 minutes, well, 11 isn't such a long time, I know, but it's a great opportunity to meet like-minded people over European lunchtime. I know not all of you are in Europe, so that's why I keep adding that little caveat to it. So look at these POLAV. You couldn't see what the other groups were discussing. What I'd like to do is to quickly debrief their insights on how to tackle different types of objections and share my toolbox as well, or tips with you. So we can see for the topic of insufficient information, well, I would need a little bit more information. The group said a deadline to revert with more information, keep it tight. For example, a small number of days, so not too far off, can be a good way to tackle it. Limit the amount of information that you will give. Otherwise, they might keep looking for more information. That's true. Sometimes less is more. What a good comment over there. Giving a lot of information can overwhelm people, and they might want to have even more details than we are able to or intend to give for any change. They need to understand the information is clear by providing clear presentations in an easy to understand language. That's also very, very important. And what kind of jargons we might be putting in, how much details? Let's just ask ourselves, are we complicating things for people? For the number 6, which was the lack of need, the cost of or impact of not doing the change can be indeed very helpful. Those of you who are familiar with the threats versus opportunities matrix, you can Google it as well, is focusing on just that. We focus not just on what are the opportunities, what people can gain if they do the change, but what are the possible perils if they don't embrace a change. For the same, also be clear that the environment is changing and explain the why again and again. For number 4, which was being undecided, where people say, oh, we're not sure if we can decide, having a community can help so they don't feel alone, using persuasion techniques. For reluctant compliance, when people just swallow it because they have to. My example was compliance, for example, for different ethical trainings online that they have to do, but they don't really embrace. Having open discussions, open conversations can also help, and bringing into the picture of more facts. For looking at open or covered disagreement, listening to understand the root cause of the disagreement, couldn't have said it better, and that's probably applicable to all of them. For the Tai Chi, refer decision, organize meetings with the colleagues or the boss if that's needed, or even asking them what else they need, exactly, what do they need to be able to convince or converse about the topic with the boss. Work out motivation of the person. Do they need to look good? What a great point about losing or winning face. That's such a driver or blocker for us. A wrong time, powerful question. If it's wrong time, when will it be the right time? Just putting the question back to them. I'll do the work to progress the topic, and you can join me when you are ready. That's also a great alternative to show them that if you're not ready to embark on the change yet, we will go ahead and I will keep an eye on when you say you are ready to it. If you think about late adapters, those who come on the bus a little bit later, for them, this is a reassuring approach indeed. For open disagreement, listening to the reasons and tackle them one by one. And the good thing about open and a very upfront disagreement that we actually know what are their issues. For a wrong time, the number 7, challenging the perception, why not now? If not now, when? And if not us, then who? Brilliant and powerful questions as well to observe. Look at that. All of these people who made it today in 4 groups, you had the chance to think about these 2 types of objections for each group just for 10 minutes. And what a great deal of tips on what we can put into action. I'd like to share with you my approach to this as well. Again, it's not exhaustive because we can go deeper, deeper, deeper. But based on my research, what I found is that with open disagreement, actively listening and acknowledging the concerns is the first one. Using facts, these two were mentioned also by your groups, bringing clarity and recognizing their viewpoint, even if it's not the viewpoint we would like them to have. That acknowledgement can take us a long way. For covert disagreement, I would say, and that wasn't mentioned yet, look at your trust and rapport with that person. If you don't have the same chemistry with them, find the tribal chiefs or informal influencers who can find out what's behind the waterline, if we use the iceberg methodology, and focus on things that you agree already, so they don't feel that they are blank disagreeing and rejecting you, and respect their position. For number 3, reluctant compliance, look at mutual benefits. Repeat, 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 repeat. And as the group already mentioned, I discussed this, talk about what if you don't do it. So show the other side of the coin too. Undecided, facts was mentioned in the little poll F, so definitely use facts and evidence. Show similar cases that show them the power of following the path of change, and break the proposals down so it's more digestible. For number 5, when people say we need more background information, go into the meeting with proofs, with the possibility to follow up with more details outside of the meeting and agree on what level of information they need. Because those people who like details, they can do to the minute details, but that's not always needed. For lack of need, fact-finding can really help. And finding specific needs. In one of my workshop, it's a recording from February, we talked about the 3 triggers, seeing role models acting for a change, seeing data, and finding stories. And the combination of the 3 can really help trigger the curiosity and commitment. Again, a webinar that I welcome you to watch the replay of. For wrong time, talk about urgency, that there is indeed a fire in the room and we have to look for the way forward. When it would be appropriate is again a great question that the group already before mentioned. And Tai Chi, ask about the person's happiness about the proposal. That might sound a bit funny, but what do they see in it? What do they like in it? How our proposal for change can make them successful? So they will have a drive to transition the messages to the partner, to the boss, and explore how to better prepare by understanding what is it that they look forward, what gives them confidence and competence in the change that you are driving. Now, these are just some tips without being exhaustive, but I hope you can take this little toolbox to enrich your approach of today. At the beginning of today's session, I mentioned, oh, if there was only a magic wand. I have 2 little kids, the age of 4 and 6, and we do have plenty of them at home. None of them probably would work on the projects I'm working on. But there is one thing I'd like to share with you, which is the stakeholder analysis and influencing strategy tool. It is a tool that some of you might have experienced, used even before. It's a template that I believe any change leader or change practitioner can greatly benefit of. I mentioned to you that change is a lot to do with common sense, but just knowing is not enough. Doing is what will help us. And whilst we are training ourselves and our change muscles, this template can really help. It's all about helping us find out who are the stakeholders, what's the impact of or on the change on them, the mindset, how do they feel about the change right now, where they need to be able to embrace it, to see what we want from them in the future, what are their issues and concerns, and also the positives. And last but not least, what is the influencing strategy that we can put into place? Not just the 8 generic types that we explored today, but specifically for your challenging stakeholders. Now, this tool, I usually take at least an hour to explain and practice. As we have little time right now today, I'd like to invite you to download a copy of a workbook I designed. It's 16 pages. It's a free workbook, no issues around it. And what you will find in it is it starts with a couple of guiding questions. If you have had the chance to read my book before, Change Matters, or you can listen for free also on Spotify to it. It's about flight and fight in the quicksand, the chapter. You can find guiding questions. Then the tool I presented to you is explained in details And it also has examples. So if you like what I just presented, the magic wand, then here you will find that. And there are top 10 tips and useful resources for you to take away as well. This is my way of thanking you for making it to today's session. So what did we do today? We explored the 8 typical objections. We talked with like-minded people of change, and we looked at a couple of tips and strategies that we can bring back to our workplace to be even better in managing change moving forward. As I'm closing the session, respecting the time you have given to me, I'd like to invite you to write in the chat, what is your takeaway? What have you learned from today's session? And whilst I'm waiting for the comments there, I would like to just highlight to you that there are a couple of free resources you can easily leverage when it comes to building your change muscles and expertise. The free workbook, and you will have it in the follow-up email, you can download at any time. And also you can find the webinar recordings from February and previous months from the link here, right here. I will have that included in the email for easy clicking if any of them are relevant or interesting for you. Last but not least, to thank all those people who've made it to today's session. I normally have a little bit of a lucky draw, 5 winners for the Change Matters book. I will do this offline and record it with a use of a lucky draw. And later today, you will find out if you're one of the lucky winners of the copies that I'd like to share with you of my book. With that, I'd like to thank you and finish with this beautiful quote from Maya Angelou, who was a social activist, an artist, and an inspiring role model of change. And she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Tackling objections like we focused on today, managing change in a human-centric manner is all about that. So with this, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. And I hope it was interesting and relevant. And I look forward to seeing you in my next webinars of Change Does Matter webinar series in September. So have a lovely rest of the day wherever you are. And thank you so much for making it today.